But can I actually fly it? Well, if you've spent any time in the comments of Space Game Revealed videos lately, you've probably seen that question asked. You may have even typed it yourself. Well, if you have, then this video is for you, because today we're looking at a group of games where the ship is the entire point. Because ultimately, there are games where the vessel is essentially a hub, a menu, or just a way to get from one area to the next. And then there are games where understanding, maintaining and operating the machine is the entire experience. These games then are firmly and, well, quite excitingly in that second camp. So let's start with Space Engineers 2, and if you want to skip through any of these, do check out the timestamps in the video. So Space Engineers 2 is perhaps the best possible example of where the whole intent of ship design comes first and foremost. The recent VS 2.2 update introduced what the developers are calling mechanical blocks. These are rotors and pistons, all built from the ground up to interact with a completely new physics engine. And here's the thing, in most games a ship is a single static model, but here that's quite different, because these rotors and pistons, well, they allow for dynamic grids and moving constructions. That might not sound like much until you really realise that means folding hangar doors on your ship, rotating gravity rings if you so want them. The bottom line then, and what I like so much about this idea, is that effectively the ship can be exactly what you want, whilst at the same time the ship really does remain the star of the show. It's what Space Engineers 2 is all about. Moving on, we come to yet another game, and this has a different take as well. The game is Starship Evo, and it's gone through quite a significant transition recently, and it's something I'm going to be covering in more depth very soon. So the transition, the change, was a huge focus to its survival and crew updates, and it's moved from being a creative builder in some senses to a lived-in survival experience where you start stranded on a planet and then have to build your way into orbit. But the genuinely interesting part, at least for me, comes from the crew management system. And here you can hire crews at stations who will roam your ship, use the beds, open the doors, and suddenly your ship's design is about a lot more than aesthetics and performance. What you got here is a ship and a game that's all about building a functional interior that accommodates people who are actually living on board it. Now, if you combine that with the ship's logic circuits, the complex arrays that automate your airlocks and landing gear and other such things, then what you have is a ship that you have genuinely put life into, that you've breathed life into. And well, that's a different angle on the same idea we've been discussing, isn't it? This is the ship as a place, one that exists and functions rather than just a screen that you navigate through. It's not just a hub, it's about something far more than that. Now, I've touched on the C-beams a few times before, but hopefully you'll forgive me if I talk about it again, because this one really is well worth focusing on. It's not released just yet, but it's up and coming and in very active development. And it fits into this video very well because it treats the ship as a physical object rather than just an avatar or something like that with stats. And I think this comes across in the footage we can see on the screen, because all of this does have a massive effect on how the ship feels, and I guess it would impact combat as well. Although I guess we won't know for sure until we've all got hands-on with this and it's in the player's hands. But in the footage it's very clear to see that the retro burns for deceleration as well as drift when the engine's cut. What that means is we can see a ship as a machine. It's operating in a very realistic sensation of space, and you kind of have to anticipate movements. This is based on visible momentum rather than just icons on a radar. You can see that in how these ships maneuver, especially into some of these clips here. You see some very impressive maneuvers. And that can also have an effect on combat with the very same type of logic all throughout. Also, subsystem targeting lets you disable an enemy's engines, weapons or radar individually. And that means every engagement is, well, it has a lot of different decisions to be involved with it. Now, still very much in the same philosophy, we come to Delta 5, Rings of Saturn. And this is, well, it's not exactly a new game, but anyway, it does sit on the other end of the spectrum. And that's exactly why I wanted to include this game in this video. So, in Rings of Saturn, it's all about understanding your ship here is actually a 100-ton physical entity where mass and thruster placement really do matter. And this is important because, well, there's a manual thruster control system that allows you to disable the onboard flight assists, and this gives you far more control, a far more direct level of control over something that can feel a lot like it has real weight behind it. And if you think of it another way, in many games you're sitting in the cockpit, you're the pilot of a ship. But here it's quite different, because what's actually happening is that you're managing a nuclear reactor and you're kind of strapped to it. And that means balancing power output, heat and propellant use. And all of this is to make sure that you have enough power to maneuver through the rings at all, that you can actually achieve the goals you want. And I guess another way of putting this is, if you really sit and think about it, you're piloting a nuclear reactor, and that gives you a different sensation, a different feel of what a ship actually is. And yeah, that comes with a lot of consequences, because, well, things can kind of go bang. And then that theme gets pushed even further when we look at Star Miner. Now, I played this, I think, around about a year ago. It's a very interesting game, and I'm looking forward to it becoming public and getting into the hands of everyone out there. They have been talking about it more quite recently, and that means it's also another game I'm going to be talking about more soon. So, in Star Miner, the internal workings of your ship are quite literally the primary gameplay loop. What happens here is that you're managing interconnected systems of power and heat, and there are two distinct types of heat management to consider as well. These are radiation and thermal dumping. And all of this while building space rigs and increasing complexity. These are all modular. On top of that, you hire officers with specific perks in engineering and logistics, and this makes the whole operation feel like a collaborative effort between you and the ship, between you and what's going on around you. So yeah, as the name of the game might imply, this is a hardcore mining simulation. And that means, to all intents and purposes, your ship gets treated as a factory which is operating in a vacuum. And that means there's a lot of depth here you have to consider to that ship. In fact, I'd go as far as arguing that in many ways, the ships are the entire purpose of Star Miner. They are the mission. And when you add the decent flight modelling to all of this, it all really adds up to something that has the potential to be really interesting. And then we come to Fallen Frontier. Now, this I've spoken about again a few times before, hoping to see more on it over the coming months, but this game has done something quite interesting with the idea of ship-focused design, and this so at a tactical level. So here, you've got a game where every shot has a physicalized consequence, and that means victory isn't determined just by getting the enemy's health bar down to 0. It doesn't just explode because the red bar is reduced right the way down. Instead, the game uses 4-phase combat system. You've got information, long range, mid-range and close quarters, and this is where the goal is to understand your enemy's ship before you ever have to actually fire a shot, because all of this ultimately matters. So the way this works is you've got component-based damage, and that means a lucky hit to a munition storage, for example, may trigger a chain reaction, a cascade of effects on the enemy ship or even your own ship if you've been hit in such a way. So like I say, a strike on a reactor, a strike on munitions, this can instantly silence a capital ship, cause it to rupture, cause it to explode, cause a lot of problems. And that means this really does have a heavy focus on ships, not one ship in this case, but a focus on many ships, including those in your fleet, as well as the way your enemy ships work as well. So the point I'm trying to get at here is that in a way we've seen a number of recent space-focused games that leave people wondering whether or not you can control your ship, or if so, just how much you can control it. We've seen that in some games where the ship in many ways is just a hub, it's just there to get you from A to B. And this, for some people, I feel is a little bit disappointing. Essentially, what's happened to the space game genre is that it's split in two, hasn't it? We've got space games that focus really heavily on the ship itself, and space games which focus on everything around the ship, and the ship is just a means to an end. Two very different things. So that means if you're someone who really wants a heavy focus on spaceships, then these are perhaps the games you'll be wanting to pay attention to. I'm sure there are many more out there as well. These are some new upcoming ones, as well as a couple that have been around for a while, and I think they deserve the attention. Let me know in the comment section which of these has caught your attention, whether there are others out there that you think belong in this conversation as well, because as always, I really like to see all that and will be reading those comments. Do take care. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. There is another one on the screen right here. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time.